Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Housing Huddle. I'm Rebecca Simon, a partner in Nixon Peabody's Affordable Housing and Real Estate Practice Group. I'm very excited to be joined today by Joshua Gold, who has just joined Nixon Peabody as counsel after spending 12 years in the Office of General Counsel at HUD. During his time at HUD, Josh worked to support the implementation of programs leveraging tens of billions of public and private funds to develop and preserve affordable housing. Josh, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
So Josh, as I said, you just recently left HUD. What can you tell us about what it's like working at HUD right now?
There's a lot going on in the agency. A lot of great people are still there working really hard to try and get these deals closed and come up with creative solutions. That's no surprise to anyone. I think that, of course, there's been a lot of loss. So some things are taking longer, or there's new people in new roles. Different offices and different programs are handling this reality differently. And so you're seeing some deals move really quickly, especially the clean packaging. There's just a lot more receptivity to assess what's the risk. If there's not a real risk, let's move forward with this. And I would say that there really is a desire, both from the politicals and the careers, to come up with creative solutions and really analyze what is required versus what is just the way we've always been doing it. So how do we come up with a way that honors the statutes and the program's purpose, but maybe moves a little quicker?
That makes sense. And I think our team's experience working with HUD right now is very similar to that. We're trying to all get as much done as possible, understanding that the staffing levels are lower right now. So let's move a little bit into HUD's policies. There have been some shifts with HUD's focus recently. Can you talk about those changes and how they've influenced the agency's policy direction?
The reality is there's a big focus on market forces and how do we leverage the private sector to get deals done. And we've been seeing that both through the notices and other guidance that we've been getting, even just in practice in terms of how waiver requests are sometimes being assessed, the more totality of the circumstances versus what have we done in the past. Some discrete examples we've seen we've seen in RAD, starting in January with the newest notice that we have. A big part of that is the flexibility in terms of how we're adjusting rents for those public housing projects that really need more subsidy. And it really goes to the creativity that you see, a tight reading of the statute, and realizing that while we've been using a specific type of cost factor adjustment, OCAF, it's not the only one that could be used, and that there are circumstances where projects don't need to use that. We don't need to use that, and a different adjustment is more appropriate. We don't know yet how that'll play out in specifics, Rebecca, but I do think we're going to see some flexibility, especially for some of those older projects that could really use some help. And we're seeing it in all kinds of programs as well. FHA, you're seeing it as well, where there's just a receptivity to what do we have to do versus what are we doing, and being open to more risk taking, provided that it's justified, right? I think that's something I think it's important to just disabuse some people in the private sector, because yes, there's more flexibility, but that doesn't mean, well, just give it to us because we want it, right? It should be thoughtful and analysis. If you're doing a waiver, it needs to follow the proper protocols for a waiver and all of that. But if all of that's done, there's for sure more receptivity.
I think that makes sense. And it's certainly something that, we at our team at Nixon has been watching out for. And, we're excited to see where some of these policies develop. We're interested to see where the Office of Recapitalization takes those RAD waivers you mentioned. So on that note, what should housing providers and developers be watching for in terms of new developments coming from HUD in the next few months?
I think the biggest thing is going to be new opportunities, right? So we're seeing some of the, like I mentioned, some of the regulations being interpreted differently, some of the requirements being interpreted differently. And I think it's being aware of what those changes are, because there are already opportunities to do more than you used to be able to do more, and to have those conversations early on with your attorneys and everyone else involved to see if there is a new way of getting this done.
And on that note, while some of the policies at HUD do seem to be evolving, HUD has also been pretty clear and consistent on others. So what do you think that's signaling to the industry about HUD's priorities right now?
I think it's important to note that a lot of the political appointees that we have, they're not new to HUD. They were here in the previous President Trump administration. So they understand what can be done and they understand sort of how to move the pieces along. And I would say it seems very thoughtful with how are we going to move the program forward, this program forward or that program forward, oftentimes incrementally to get to where we want to go. That's at least my perception. I haven't talked with the secretary on this matter directly, but that's my perception from the inside and now on the outside. So yeah, I don't think anyone should expect that RAD is going to completely change so that there's no requirement for a PHA or nonprofit to be involved. Like those core components of these programs are going to stay. How do we leverage the private sector? Sort of the fine details, I think, is where we're going to see a lot of the movement as opposed to let's just change everything right now.
Yeah, that's great perspective to have, Josh. So tell us a little bit about your practice and what value you're going to be bringing to our clients.
A lot of it's really the same as what I was doing at HUD, which is how do we get to yes? How do we work with the private parties and HUD and any other governmental agencies that are involved to navigate the different programs, requirements, and concerns to get our deals done. And I have to say it's been exciting and enjoyable so far because I do feel like Nixon has always worked so well with HUD. That was my experience on the inside, and that's my experience now on the outside. And I'm just one additional part to this incredible brain trust. And it's great to be working with all of you all and to be reunited with Kathy Soroka when she gets back from maternity leave, because it was really enjoyable many, many years ago working with her to put RAD into place. And now it's just such an exciting time to be working at Nixon as we think about how to creatively evolve the program and work with the private sector and the agency to do that.
Yeah, and we're certainly very excited to have you. I want to end on a lighter note. I think our Nixon Peabody team prides ourselves on, being affordable housing nerds. And so I wanted to ask you, what's one housing trend or program that you're personally very excited about right now to work on?
So I'm really excited about the RAD program. I've been a fanboy since I was a little baby lawyer on RAD. Now that the program is evolving, we're really seeing that RECAP is being thoughtful about ways to expand opportunities to leverage the private sector and help some of those projects that really need it to survive. We've discussed before the notice from January, which allows for the possibility of a different cost factor in certain extraordinary circumstances for RAD deals. And I'm looking forward to working with our developer clients and the agency to really figure out what that means in terms of what projects are eligible and what factors we're going to be utilizing to keep these projects thriving for decades to come. Because at the end of the day, that's the purpose of RAD, right? Is not just to develop housing, but sustain it for the long haul.
Fantastic. Well, thank you, Josh, so much for joining me on the Housing Huddle. And we're very excited to have you on the team here at Nixon Peabody.
Thanks.